Hello and welcome to another episode of R&D podcast, Mews R&D podcast. Today with the CEO Matt. Hi Matt.
Hello.
And thanks for joining us.
Of course.
You came for the new hire orientation, right?
I try every month, but I don't always succeed. But I think it's important to always be present when a lot of people fly into Prague, and like part of the culture is just being there in person.
And how many do we have this month?
20. It's a quiet month, actually. We've had quite a crazy few years.
Yeah. Well, I recently watched some or checked some stats, and it's crazy to think how many people are here only less than a year or less than 2 years, because now our new AI tool shows you these things. So it's scary.
How big were we when you entered the business?
I entered the office that looked like something like this. It was 8 people, I think, or 9 people. And we are going to actually talk about the beginnings of Mews, because I think it's important for people to know where it came from. And, you were there. Although I think we will talk about one myth that may be there, that maybe people think that you are the co-founder, that you built it from the scratch. But I think you joined an established company.
Yeah.
Can we call that?
Well, there was a physical company when I joined, yes.
So how did it look like when you entered the office?
We were in an accounting office of the hotel. And so I walked in and there was just 2 developers who were part-time. So they just waltzed in whenever, between classes, and me and Richard. And it was just the 4 of us basically in that office. It's very
But
small.
nobody used the system yet?
No. There was not a line of code written on the product that ended up being the Mews PMS, the property management system. So they had an Apple app that they built for guest experience. But actually, when I entered, it said, well, we've got a hotel to open, and it is April, and the hotel opens in September. What is that system? Where is it? Show it to me. And there wasn't one. So that was really the moment that we've got 4 months to start building the PMS, the property management system. So let's start on that.
Because originally it wasn't plan of Richard, the founder, to have a PMS, no? It was like to have that app connected to another PMS, but that sort of failed. So that's why you came in?
Yeah, when I entered it, the app that they had built was incredible. It was this beautiful app that basically was a guest app where guests can, consume information about the city. They can order room service. It was such a nicely done app, but it needed to know, how do you get an app onto people's devices? And it didn't integrate because these legacy systems didn't want to integrate with anyone. Like they had these closed infrastructures. And that's really where we got stuck, because the app was there. We now needed to just integrate it, and no one wanted to talk to us.
But you had quite a decorated career in Hilton, right? You really progressed from front office. That's where you started, or?
I started as a trainee. So I started right out of hotel school. I've done hotel school. And then I started as a trainee in London, then South Africa. And then I came out in Prague, where we have a massive 800 bedroom hotel, where I went into food and beverage first, which I didn't want that job because I wasn't great with wines. When you go to a fancy restaurant and then someone's like, what wine would you recommend? And that was my worst nightmare.
You have red and white.
That's literally it. And I can make rosé, but that's about the extent of my wine.
Make it from the 2.
Is that not how they do it?
Yeah, it is.
So they gave me that job for a year and a half, and I enjoyed it. But I really I had this passion for front desk. So they finally then gave me that front desk job. And within a year, they said, you're actually really good with people. Maybe you should be in sales. So they moved me after a year into sales, because they're like, great, you can add more value to the business in sales than in front desk. So I experienced all these different departments at a massive scale hotel, but I felt the pain deeply, deeply, deeply. And that was the moment when I found Richard. And he's like, oh my God, I'm doing this thing with the hotel. What are you doing at Hilton? It must be so innovative. And I was like, you have no idea the legacy tech stack that we're running on to kind of keep the lights on in this giant hotel. So he felt my frustration and he latched on it, and he got me to quit my job.
So was it a real coincidence? And I assume you had to take quite a pay cut, when you went from great sales job in the best hotel in Prague.
It's strange because when you right out of school go straight into working for Hilton, you only stay in really beautiful, nice hotels and you get a really nice salary. And to then get offered a job basically without a salary for a while, I thought, okay, what's the worst case? The worst case is that I go and say, Hilton, please take me back. I need a job, I need a salary. But actually, I was like, let's make one decision that isn't the thing that people expect from me. Because I'd done everything according to the book up until that moment, and it didn't make me happy. I was left really disillusioned. So I said, screw it. I'll just quit my job. I'll join with Richard. And if I hate it within 3 months, I can be back at the reception desk or in sales in a hotel. And it took a couple of years before we finally were able to get some salary out of it. But they were the best years of my life. Whilst they were the hardest, they were also the best.
So what was the first thing you did after you joined this? There was no HR. There was Richard.
There was nothing.
Did you sign a contract?
I may have signed something. I actually wonder whether the document still exists. I'm sure I signed something, but I remember that first day really well because, I basically had a new MacBook that I just bought myself at the Apple Store. And I asked one of the developers, Honza, it's like, so how do I set up the printers on this thing? And he's like, oh, we're not your IT department, we're developers. And I was like, oh, okay, lesson number 1. And then it became this barrage of lessons that I had to go through. But that was, when we started, I wasn't a very tech savvy person. I just felt the deep pain of hospitality. And I was just there to help kind of explain that pain whilst we built products around it.
So what did you know about tech? You say you weren't too tech savvy. So did you know how a development
nothing
line looks like?
You literally come out of hotels and I could barely open like PowerPoint or connect my printer to I figured out the printer.
You had to.
I had to. But you don't know. And it's almost a good thing when you just deeply understand the problem that you're trying to solve. That blank slate of not knowing what legacy systems look like, you're not going to make that mistake. And I learned very quickly. Like one of the things at Mews is this constant learning, which I thrive in. Like I got so bored by the end of my time at Hilton. And I've not been bored for the last 12 years at Mews because constantly you're surrounded by really smart people who push you and push you and push you, and it makes better people.
So walk me through product development at that time. Or maybe I think we can even go first maybe 3 years where it didn't change much in the beginning, because I know that during the year that I joined, I think 3 people altogether joined in that year. And you just mentioned that there was a small new hire orientation with 20. So we can see the velocity has changed. So how does the product development looks like? And who are you in there?
Like in the beginning, because Richard and I were also not attuned to each other, we would have fights because we would just disagree about fundamental things. And I was like, that is not how this works in a hotel. And he always lives in this world where he's 5 years ahead of anyone else in the room. So what he says is correct. That's where we'll end up. But I'm like, yeah, but right now in this hotel, we need to check people in. And I need to be able to issue a bill. So what does that look like? And we didn't even know that there was a thing called product management. So everything was wireframed on a whiteboard. We took a photo of it. We sent it to the designer. He was not a graphic designer for mobile apps. That was just a graphic designer. And he would make a beautiful screen. And then the developers would instantly start coding it. And then I would quality assure test it. And we just throw it out to the wolves, to our customers at the time, and see like if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, then we recode it. So there wasn't much of a process. It was just like, let's build it, let's ship it, and let's see what the feedback is.
Did you meet in some regular fashion, or was it simply, okay, what's on fire, let's fix it?
What's on fire, mostly. Like when you build an entire kind of core infrastructure piece for a hotel, you just have to build as fast as you can. And the benefit is there's no legacy code to keep in mind. So you can build screens really, really fast. And that's what we did. We had to build within 5 months an MVP to go live in a real hotel that needed to do their accounting on that system. And God, we messed up. But like, again, that was a massive lesson as well.
But I guess it helped a little bit that the first clients were sort of affiliated with Richard and his family. So how did it look like when you actually had to go and sell it to first real customer?
It was literally me and Richard with our little laptops walking into lobbies of hotels and saying, can we meet the general manager? And then, all of the front desk agents are taught, you do not just bring out the GM for a random meeting with these 2 guys that have just walked in with their laptop. And it was really hard, and we got a lot of no's. And then a lot of these hotels, as I walked down Prague, I remember walking in their lobby, and I remember walking in their lobby, and the rejections that we got. Where we finally got traction was we found one hotel, Hotel Liberty, which is this hotel off Wenceslas Square, and they were so frustrated with their current legacy system, and it was the leading system, and that's what made it really powerful. And when we went into that meeting, and I remember the 2 developers, they came to meet this customer, and once they deployed Mews, they're like, oh, this is a thing. We thought you guys were joking about what you asked us to build for the Emblem Hotel, But then they saw a real customer who'd come from an industry leading solution and said, I want something new. And that was the moment for the developers to realize there's a real problem that we're solving here. And if the industry leading solution doesn't have the answers, then there's magic here. And then luckily I found a few friends who were hoteliers that I was like, please let us just demo it in your smallest hotel. And then we can upgrade to the bigger ones. But it was a lot of friends and family in the beginning.
I guess it also helped a lot that the hotels from Richard, and we can say its emblem and the Old Town Square, that they were brand new, that they didn't have any customers from before. So what happened now when you got Hotel Liberty and you had to migrate everything? Did you do it
by hand?
Yeah.
Every reservation that was pre-booked, we had to by hand put into the system. Basically, we didn't have import tools that we have now, or now we will connect to like a channel manager and then just push all those reservation data in. With Hotel Liberty, it was literally us punching in all the reservations, checking the rates, checking the segment. It was a lot of painful work. And at some point, the pain becomes, like when you start doing bigger and bigger deployments, when the pain becomes so painful, that's when you pull in the developer and he's like, you're doing what by hand? That makes zero sense. Like, let me fix that for you in half an hour.
Well, I mean, I joined 2 years after what you were just describing, and it hasn't changed much. I remember one big hostel where we messed up the import of the rooms, and one of my first job was to actually go one room by one to check where the mistake was and to add it manually into the system. But at least I got the hand on the product. And you and Richard, it's like I always call it like a kind of a yin and yang, bad cop, good singer, bad singer.
Who's the bad cop?
Not sure, but who's the good singer?
Richard.
But it's not so common, such dual leadership. And you've done it for basically the early stages for 12 years. How does it look like? And maybe what are the friction points where you hope that, I wish I was here alone? Was there ever a moment like that?
Oh, 100%. Especially in the beginning, because you're not attuned to each other. So I don't really know what his triggers are. And he's a very complex person in a good way. Like, I like complex people around me. But because he thinks so dramatically different about problems than I do, I'm like, right, let's solve the problem right in front of me. Whereas he thinks deeply about, okay, what are the 5 iterations of this and what's the world going to be like? So we fought a lot. But every time we had a blowout fight in the beginning, we would always walk away saying, sorry, I was such an ass in that. Like, that was not my intent. And we'd give each other a hug and we're good again and we're friends. And it took like COVID, which was such a difficult time for us to try and navigate that really complex time. That really brought us extremely close together. And I think we've never been more aligned than we are today, just because we've been working so closely together for 12 years. And it just works. But it does require really aggressive working on that relationship, because it hasn't always been great.
But now you're very far from each other. He's in New York, you're in Amsterdam. Originally, you were both in Prague, every day in the office. And I know, back in the day, home office was, this person is slacking. I don't like that. I know you really liked people being in the office, but you changed so much during the COVID. And I think for the good, for the company, because now we're able to capture really talent anywhere and still keep those offices for the people who want to. What is it that you miss from those times, let's say? Do you miss really the daily water cooler talks and the meetings that we had, or is it something that you're happy we don't have anymore and you can focus on things at home?
It's hard, because today I was in the office and I really enjoyed running into people that I wouldn't necessarily have a call with in my schedule when I'm sitting at home. And I do really enjoy those serendipitous moments, but they are, you can have better meetings than randomly hoping to run into a person and have a great conversation. And we try and make sure that people meet each other, but say, okay, talk about this thing and solve this thing. And when you give people a purpose when they're meeting, so we do a lot of offsites and we're like, right, this is an offsite and we're going to talk about this really hairy challenge. That is a much better meeting than hoping that hypothetically over lunch, I might have a really great conversation with a person. And they do happen, but it doesn't scale well in my opinion. So I was all about, I want to see everyone in office, and I was this very traditional manager. But I'm like, if it doesn't work for us anymore, then we pivot. And COVID was one of those moments where like, well, it doesn't work for us. Let's try this. And I was like, this is actually fantastic. And I'm so efficient at home. But also I need that human connection. So let's do lots of offsites with the remotes. So we're figuring out a new way of remote first. Like we're not pure remotes. We want to see people in person. So we've just reconstructed our Prague office to make it super accessible for people to fly in, have meetings, and then fly back out to their homes.
Like the Prague office is just so good. I've been to all the offices basically from the beginning, and I was telling you today that
it's bad. Sorry about that.
And I usually chose them. I was the one doing the real estate research and stuff, but it almost feels inappropriate to have this leap to this what we have right now, because we have so many people actually reaching out to us, loving the space from the outside. So it's also great for the public kind of picture of us, because all the Prague great companies have great offices where people love to come. So I'm happy we have that, and you can hear people even traveling from afar in Czech Republic coming to the office.
Nice.
Nice. Thanks. Thanks for finally having that done. We talked about how the product management looked like back in the day. Now fast forward now, how much are you still involved in product? Because I will say one thing, I think you even said it once, that you are sort of a micromanager, and I think it's not a bad thing if you kind of can keep it in
if you recognize it.
If you recognize it and you do something about it. How do you now, how do you work with everything is happening and you cannot be everywhere?
Yeah, I find it really hard actually, because I love what we're building. So I try and I'm in every channel where product releases are being discussed, and I watch the videos and I pause and I'm like, does the screen feel right? And I'll comment. So you see me and Richard generally in every updated video, we will comment in those videos because we're deeply care for the solution. But we're also not always the best person. So we try and not lead too much. I will ask the question saying, do we think that this is the right font? Instead of saying, that needs to be this color or this thing, because I'm not the specialist. We've got incredible designers, incredible developers and product managers who actually know better, but they do need to be pushed. And sometimes I'm like, right, that button is broken. So I did an online checkout the other day at a hotel. And I said, let me record you a video of the experience that I'm having with this online checkout. And a button had gotten loose and it had started floating in the screen. And the loading times on some of the screens were bad. And that's one way for me to really engage with the product. I live it in hotels. And then I share feedback through video because it's just faster than the way that we used to do quality assuring. But I really miss it, like the day-to-day. But there's just so many hours in the day and it is not my job. So I try and dip in and then dip in and dip in. But I can't make that my week. That's just impossible.
So what is your job? You're a CEO. What is it? What does it mean?
It's really difficult to explain it. So people are like, can I just spend a day with you? I'm like, and do
Which
what?
one?
You're going to sit in my conference calls all day and just watch me? And it is a lot of ultimately I'm in charge of culture and making sure that the culture scales because, I want to make sure that our team members are engaged. An engaged team member drives way more output. So we want to make sure that the mission is clearly communicated and that we're consistently executing. And that's not one of our strengths, consistency and follow through and pick priorities because there's so many opportunities for us. And this is where my role comes in, navigating the growth, the enthusiasm, the culture, and making the right bets. And no one can point to the work I do. And that's one of the hardest things. I used to love working at the front desk in a hotel because I knew I did 50 check-ins that day and I did 50 checkouts. And that was my achievement. Whereas now I influence. And you need to get comfortable with that because I no longer can point to a feature in a system saying, I did that. I influenced it in some light way by hiring the right person who then built something really great. And I love it now, but it's taken me a lot to get used to this.
And what do you say to your mom that you do?
She never asks, actually. My dad on LinkedIn, he would post sometimes, and it's so lovely. I really enjoy it. So I posted about Mews Unfold, and he would say, "Thank you for sharing" on LinkedIn. And I'm like, it means so much that they're following, but I don't genuinely think that they know what I do anymore at this point, which is okay. And it's hard for parents because they see my struggles, because they can see in my eyes that I've had a really bad week or a bad month. But they don't know what to do about it. And that's as a parent, and you're a parent, I'm sure right now you're the end all, you have all the answers. And at some point your kids will outgrow you. And that's so a really terrifying moment.
It's so scary. As you say, I know everything and I know it right. But speaking of LinkedIn, so you say that LinkedIn influencing runs in your family?
Yeah, no.
How many followers does your dad have?
I don't even know. I was like, why is he still on LinkedIn? Like, he's retired,
amazing.
but it's nice.
So does he have retired, like as a progression of his career?
Actually, I don't know what he says.
And you, I mean, you are actually, I checked in 2022, I believe, you were top 3 CEOs based in Czech Republic in terms of being followed. How did you get there? Because I don't think you, as a little boy, you wanted to be somebody on LinkedIn with posts. And I don't think you wanted that a couple of years ago. So what changed, and what are you trying to achieve, let's say?
So LinkedIn has become this tool that I never expected, like you said. So I used LinkedIn when I was a sales manager at Hilton, and I would do trainings on LinkedIn for the sales team. And I'd be like, right, if you want to know which competitors are booking our competitors' hotels, like which corporates are booking competitor hotels, just go to the salesperson's LinkedIn connections and figure out which secretaries from IBM, from McDonald's are connected to them. Like those are the people you want to reach out to.
Wow.
So already, like this was like 15 years ago, I was like pushing LinkedIn because I thought it was such a powerful platform. But it's now transformed in a way for me, one, to communicate to potential new employees, to our customers, potential customers, our existing employees. Like it's become this thing where people are watching what I'm doing. And I'm looking at the apples behind you because I did this random post. My husband at some point said, can you do something about the apples in hotels? These green apples are inedible. Why are we doing this? And I did a post about it. And then now, last week at Mews Unfold, several hoteliers came to me commenting about the apples. Yesterday, I walked into the Hilton Prague. I ran into the GM and he said, I'm so sorry, I didn't check the apples in your room. And it's become this ridiculous thing that I post about. And it's a kind
But it's a memorable thing, you know. We, in our R&D community, we did this claw machine thing, right? And everybody remembers us as the company with the claw machine, and they want us to have it again. So I think we talked about it some time ago that I take, obviously, I don't have such a follower base as you do, maybe one day.
Yet.
But I have it as a sort of my personal diary, so that people can see my values. And I don't really care how many people follow it, and I don't think you care as well. It simply comes with the size of the company, etc. But I think it really, as you said, it shows what you're up to, and you can influence those people who are thinking, okay, do I want to join this company with this CEO, or do I want to join another one? And I think from your, because the discussion is all the time on LinkedIn, do the CEOs do it themselves?
Oh, the amount of times people say like, who does your social media? And I was like, me, 100%, everything from the videos, the editing, like, because I actually really enjoy it and I do it on the weekend. But like, if I can't do that anymore, I'm like, okay, like what kind of CEO am I? And a lot of them are like, I need a marketing team and a budget. Like, you do not. You need $150 to buy the software on your laptop, figure it out, and then just put it out there.
And this mindset, I think, is something that, you know, maybe disappearing a little bit from a big company where people can just do anything, you know, because that's what we had to do at the time. And now we're hiring specialists. So sometimes I'm a little sad that, you know, some people say, well, this is not part of what I do. I think this, if you can have that mindset, everybody can have that mindset. So where do I go from LinkedIn now?
TikTok. I have not figured out TikTok yet.
Good.
I'm obsessed because it's such an... So this morning, you know, it was the Met Gala. So I was like, great, need to be on TikTok for an hour because I need to consume what happened.
I need to be on...
Like, it is my entertainment.
Is it in your calendar? Because everything is in your calendar.
Like, I live through those platforms, but I haven't figured out what my voice is on that platform. And if I should have a voice there, and that's also okay. But it's incredibly powerful how it's come up and how it's influencing the way that people book and travel and etc. So, and I think every time these platforms come up, a lot of my generation, you reject it instantly. Like, no, it's scary because the algorithm is so good. I'm like, yes. So therefore we need to understand it because it's a platform that we can use for our business in some way. And every time something new comes up, I'm like, great, let me be the first to try it out.
Well, I heard that if you're bald, don't go to TikTok because nobody will believe you because nobody will listen to a bald man. So I don't think I can go. Yep, apparently. So when we talk about how you kind of present yourself, how you talk to the audience, like larger audiences, how do you talk about our R&D? Like, what is it that you say about our tech product? Do people ask it? Like, are CEOs from other companies are asking about it, or not much because it's still so distant?
It's because they are relatively invisible to the org. They don't engage, but I love the stuff that they do because R&D is like 40% of our organization, I think. And it's a really big investment, much bigger than some of our competitors. And we double down on it because we need the best developers to make sure that our product is always 5 steps ahead of what our competitors are doing. And it's why I'm so confidently and openly talking about our product, because I'm not afraid of someone copying features, because I know what they're working on already now for next year. And I think that's the power of having an incredible R&D team. Like, and sometimes it's features that come out and I'm like, I didn't even know we were doing that. Like Passkey, we deployed the way that you log into the system with your fingerprint or with your facial recognition. I didn't even know we were building that. And suddenly it just gets released. And that stuff makes me so happy when our developers are so far ahead of where I even think that they're working on. And that's for me the kind of, I hope we see more of that developers are just doing these incredible things and they don't allow products that are inferior to get out there. And they're just like, no, we will only put it out there when it's better than anyone else's product. And our industry, the bar is so low in hospitality technology. Like our competitors, and the legacy tech that you see, it just isn't, the bar is really low. And I don't want to compare ourselves to those solutions. I want us to compare to like the greatest solutions out there. Like we love Slack internally. Like let's build a product as good as Slack that people talk about. And we've got some way to go.
Follow Mews R&D on LinkedIn and Instagram to get all the news that Matt was just talking about. But yeah, actually speaking of Slack and speaking of other companies outside of hospitality who are, and maybe even people, because you mentioned that, we talked about you as a CEO. Do you have some CEOs that you like to follow and you like to learn from? Or are there any companies that you're like, this is where I would like Mews to be one day?
So I listen to a lot of podcasts more and more. I've gotten into podcasts and like
there's this 2025.
Yeah, like I've always struggled because they're so long form. And I'm like, when am I supposed to do it? And I figured out flights and taxis. And I sit on a lot of those and I get car sick. So rather than insist on being on my phone, I now listen to podcasts, and I find Diary of a CEO is one of my favorite podcasts where I get lots of CEOs that talk through it because I don't really care about one person. I'm like, I want all of their perspectives because no one's going through what I'm going through in the setup that we have. So get as many perspectives. Acquired is one of those podcasts that they're like 3.5 hour
they're long
download, but they are so good. And when you really take time, and I like an Acquired, I'm like in the weekend when I'm lying in the grass, that's when I want to listen to it.
Wow, I'd like to see that.
It's very rare. But like it's that stuff like that, really understanding the business strategies that these incredible companies have had, or the mess ups that they had growing, and when they had to say, okay, this is not going to work, we need to cut back, and that's the stuff I love. I try and read, but I just don't have time for that, or don't have enough time. I'm reading a really interesting book at the moment.
How about gym or going for a run? Is that something in your diary, or there is no time for that?
No, I'm obsessed. So I'm a bit of a robot in my Monday to my every day of the week.
Yes.
So I sleep 8 hours. 8 hours is a minimum, and nothing ever cuts my sleep. And then I wake up at 5, and I get to the gym at 6, and I work out every 6 days a week. I work out. Because I need that to de-stress. Like there's so much coming at you. So I work out, and then I get to work at 7:30, and then I work until 7. So it's quite an intense week, but it's also the life I chose.
What would you like some people who are maybe outside, because you have lived the R&D, you have lived the product, you have lived tech, and I know that there is always this sales versus tech, maybe sales versus product, sales versus everybody, maybe. What would you like people in sales, in maybe finance, in somewhere else, what would you like them to know about R&D? Because one of the things that always comes to my mind, and when people is like, why does it take so long? It's just a button. So is there anything that you would like to tell to people like, hey, this is simply how it's done, or they're doing their best, hopefully?
Like the biggest challenge is that people that ask for features or hotel or customers, they always think from their own perspective, and they're like, adding a button here makes so much sense. But rolling back a button is impossible. So if we add a button there and it's cluttered the screen, that's one more button on the screen. You cannot remove the button because now people will start getting used to that button being there. So maybe the use case for you was really valid, but for 99% of the other customers, it wasn't valid. And that's where the discovery comes in, where we actually interview, we show the designs to customers saying, does this make sense? And we learn so much from that phase. Before a developer even starts coding anything, the research that we do with the designers, the UX and UI designers, is so critical, so that when we deploy things, and it's so nice now, when we deploy things, we don't roll things back anymore because it's been deeply researched and it's working. Whereas in the early days, and you were also doing quality assurance for us at the time, we would throw something out there. It's like, well, that didn't work then, and let's roll it back. And it is incredibly painful for customers to have to go through that. So, I think, yes, feedback is always valid when someone says, why don't you just deploy this thing? But it's like the context of 12,000 customers we have is really critical.
I have one specific feature in my mind when you mentioned this, and those were the colors of customers, that you could assign a color that was around the customer.
Where did that go?
I don't know.
I love that.
Because I remember hotels always wanted more colors and customizable colors, and then we said, okay, we're going to have 5. VIP, what do we have?
But they're gone completely now.
I think so.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, so
That's
maybe
such a good feature.
Maybe you should ask the team about it, what happened. But what is it that you would like the developers and the product managers know more about the outside world? Because I think now we still don't hire exclusively developers that work in hospitality, and we will never do that, right? We will always hire from everywhere. The first developer in Mews, he traveled for the first time with me. He didn't have even a passport when he started Mews. And I think, as you mentioned, this not know what I don't know was perfect for the beginning, because he was able to say, okay, no, we're going to do it this way, because it made sense to him. What would you like them to know more? Because I know that they are spending more and more time with the customers, which is the customer centricity that we introduced some time ago. But what is it something that you would like them to know?
Just go out there and just talk and listen and see. Like I remember we deployed this kiosk a couple of years ago, and it's a kiosk for check-in, check-out at the hotels. And this hotel that was like, they had hundreds of rooms, and they deployed this beautiful kiosk in the lobby, and they were just so unhappy. And I said, I'll come, but will you allow me to bring our product team with us? And I said, let's just stand in the lobby for 3 hours. Let's just watch a person walk up to the kiosk and see what they do. And it was the most excruciatingly painful experience that we had. But within a couple of weeks, they deployed a fix, and that customer was happier than ever because they suddenly saw this massive change that we had. But it was only because we had been there, we'd watched and felt the pain. Like we were so embarrassed that we deployed a product that was just really crappy. And I think it is really hard for some of the complex features to go and sit behind someone in an office. But we record a lot of design calls with hotels. And I think developers should listen to them to really understand why we're doing things in a certain way. And we often take shortcuts because we're like, well, that's too hard to code. Let's just do the easy things. But it's hard to cope because it's the most elegant, most beautiful solution. That's why Apple products are so simple, because they will not allow shortcuts. And I do still think that we sometimes allow for shortcuts because it's too hard to do. And I think there's a pride that you have to have in making the best solution for the customer and then seeing their eyes when you deploy it and like, this is exactly what I was hoping it would be.
Well, it's the constant speed versus quality, right? So where are you? Like if we have, speed, quality, where are you on the line?
I'm like saying, okay, speed is a thing that I don't have much patience. So I'm definitely on the speed side. So if you get 70% right, I'm like, go for 70% speed because we can get it right over time, but don't abandon it. What we used to do is we would build something that was kind of 70% there, and then we would drop it and we'd move on to the next part of the system. But like what's nice now is we've got teams that are solely focused on constantly iterating. So we might put something out there that is 70, 80% there, but we have people that constantly now take feedback based on what we deployed. And there's things we learn that we wouldn't have learned if we didn't have hundreds of customers already using the 70% kind of product. And that's why I think it is important to get it out, to test it in large groups, and then we can just iterate it.
So we still do these sort of testing with, like we ask our clients that, hey, is there like 5 properties that want to test this?
Yeah, for sure. So we do a lot of beta. So we have this community platform where hotels engage, and then we say, hey, this is a feature that you upvoted on user voice, where people can say, I need this particular feature for check-in. Saying, well, you upvoted it. Are you willing to beta test this? And then we will test it first with like 3 hotels. Then we expand that to 20 hotels, then to 100, and then like, great, ram it out to 12,000 hotels. But we do a lot more than we have ever done.
By the way, there's another feature that I like to remember, and that I don't know if you'll probably remember, because I think in Netherlands there was this law that when a room is not occupied for a week, you need to flush. Legionella. And I remember this was the greatest example of the engineers being engineers, because you were me or you, simply us, who were the softer part of the company. We were like, okay, we need to do a customization for the Netherlands legal environment. And the developers never wanted to do these custom-made things for...
To explain, Legionella, the bacteria forms in water that stands still for several days. So there's a law in the Netherlands that said every 7 days that a room is unoccupied, you need to go into the room and open the taps to flush through the water so that no one gets Legionella poisoning. So the developer said, well, that makes sense. Let's just roll it out to the rest of the world, even though that's just a law in the Netherlands.
It's very likely if it's in the Netherlands, it's likely somewhere else.
Legionella doesn't stop at the border. So they said, just ram it out to the rest of the world. And it was the most hated feature probably on the platform.
Do we still have it? Do you still have to flash?
It still exists, yeah. But you can switch it off now.
But I guess you're not a very good hotel when you have 7 days empty room. But we spoke now about some customization, and there is this sentiment by some people that we are becoming a feature factory. It's something that you don't like to hear. It has a very negative connotation. What do you have to say about that? Are we still as innovative, or if we're not, why?
I think we are, but we are a B2B solution and we are moving up in the enterprise space. So whilst some people feel we're a feature factory, we need to take into account what customers need. The discussions we have with some of the brands, and we have had really difficult conversations saying, we are not your dev shop. We are here to listen to what you're asking us for, but then we will do the thing that we think is right. And we push back a lot, but it is hard. Sometimes the features that they're saying, they're things that were on our roadmap, but they're just not prioritized. So the reprioritization of those things is, what we do, what we can do, but how we build it, that's always up to our product-led growth kind of mindset, where we do the discovery, we build the thing that's right. We never build to something that a customer has drawn for us. We just ask, what are the problems you're looking to solve? Maybe you don't need a report. Maybe we can automate that whole workflow so that we never have to build the report you're asking us to build, because we just automated the whole thing. And I think that's the differentiation. We have to really listen to customers, because in a B2C, if you're building TikTok, you can just start deploying things straight to customers and then you see the analytics. In B2B, these are customers that are intensely using it and paying a lot of money. So we have to have a conversation with them, what they're looking to build, but how we build it. No one knows better to build products than our teams.
That's a bold statement. I like that. Do you have an example of a hotel coming to us and say, okay, we need this because, and we were like, okay, let's have a look at it. And that we suggested actually a different solution that was more innovative, and the hotel was then happy? I know I put you on the spot because this was not in the prepared sheet.
Well, so in the very early days, I remember we had a customer that was a hostel customer, and we were very poor at the time. So we took their money so that they can tell us what to build. And we really needed the cash because we needed to pay your salaries and some of the other salaries. So we took their money and we said, yeah, sure, here's the 20 features that we built. And then 2 years in, we're like, we're never going to build this feature. And I remember getting on a call with the customer saying, we're not going to build this. This makes no sense for us.
But
sorry.
We're keeping the cash.
Sorry. And we ended up keeping the cash, and the customer is still with us today. But it's just having that really difficult conversation saying it actually doesn't make sense. So there's one feature called allotments in hospitality. And, my mother will go to a travel agent to book her holidays, and she goes into the brochure and she's like, this holiday. And then the travel agent's like, sure, I got you, it's booked. And she's like, he hasn't even checked the computer, but it's because of traditional kind of systems. They had an allotment. And I remember in the early days, it's like, we will never build this. This is so stupid. But here we are 12 years in, we have actually built it at some point because it made sense from a product point of view. We saw other use cases and somehow we've built it, not with the purpose of building that feature, but we had just unlocked it through feature development.
But did we build it in an innovative way? Or is the good old allotments?
It is the good old allotments, I think.
Okay, fair. But I think you mentioned something that one of the hotels simply was happy anyway with us. But there was one case where the hotel was so persistent that they said, okay, just open the API for us.
Oh, yes.
And I think that was such a pivotal moment for our company, because the open API now is like the thing that you talk about. No, that's the first thing that you will start a conversation with.
Yeah, this hotel wanted to go live before Christmas, and it was November, and they said, we are building a whole kiosk. Not a single guest is going to come by a reception desk, and we love that, but we had no way to do that because we didn't have a kiosk and we didn't have an API. But they're like, it's fine. We've got a development team. We will just build the kiosk ourselves. Just give us the API. And I remember the conversation with our CTO at the time. I said, can we just give us the API? And he said no, because our the code wasn't set. Like, we was morphing so fast that if you put an API out there and every time you changed the system, you had to backwardly work with the API to make it compatible to the old kind of API endpoints. But luckily, we were able to convince him to give us that. And then I remember saying, do you mind if I just put it on the website and see if anyone wants to maybe develop to it? And he allowed me to do that. And once we put our API on the website, because like, why would we hide this? Why wouldn't we share this with the world like everyone else had done? Suddenly we started seeing all these young startups that have been dying to get access to this core system of the hotels, starting to build their startups on top of Mews. And we're like, oh, this is a real problem that not only we faced, but everyone in the industry was facing. And some really great hospitality companies started with Mews and have built their whole companies, and then they expanded, and most of the industry has now opened up their API. And it's actually publicly available on most of the websites. It's not everywhere still, but we have 1,100 integrations in our marketplace, making us the most integrated system. And it's powerful. But it took a bold decision from our CTO.
Well, it was also very painful, because there were times when I was walking around Amsterdam, probably the red light district, and I had to switch off one integration because they were just overwhelming us with requests because we had no limitations. But I guess it was part of the fun.
Yeah.
We talked about features a little bit. Is there anything that you're particularly happy about past couple of months, maybe even a year, if there was like a big release that you were like, okay, I'm super proud of this. This is something I was hoping for when I started this.
So it's a thing that I didn't think I would ever get excited about, which is security. And most of the hospitality platforms are facing a lot of phishing from some of these Russian farms where they're just trying to phish access to your systems. And we were very quick to roll out two-factor authentication and enforce it. So we'd rolled it out years before, but like 3-4% of people were using it. And we said, this needs to go out fast because that's the best way to protect yourself. And we rolled it out in several weeks and we enforced it across hotels. And then we started, rolled out single sign-on and passkey. And we are now leading the way for hospitality in the way that we think about security and logging into the system and protecting the systems. And it is stuff like that really excites me. When there's a genuine threat, our teams come together and they build better solutions than anything that I've seen really fast. So I could talk about the really fun front of house kiosks and things which I love, but what they delivered on the security side, it's so powerful.
Well, you became sort of a voice of the security, and I think that's another thing that people appreciate about you is that you don't really have a filter. And when I was talking to you before this, I was like, is there any no question? I said, no, just ask me anything. And I think this culture goes well, down, because if people are open about things and are not afraid that you'll be judged or you'll be kind of copied, because, even Richard used to say that how is it, like copying is the biggest form of flattery or something like that.
I think Madonna said it first, but then Richard maybe took it from Madonna.
I'm not sure. It's either.
It could be either.
But I think the security is a really interesting topic because, I think it was our CPO that really started teaching us about security. We had no idea what security was. Is it something that scares you? Like, because one of my questions was like, what really scares you in the business? Is this like one of the things that you are like, okay, we need to take this super seriously?
In the moment, I saw the elevated phishing attempts against us, and the numbers didn't lie. And I was like, I'm really uncomfortable about it, but somebody has to say something, because I was on calls with a lot of hospitality systems and everyone's experiencing it, but everyone's like, well, we don't want to say anything because, legal needs to have a say. And what if and I said, somebody needs to talk about this. And I said, I'll do a video. So I said to our team, I'll do a video. And then if you're all uncomfortable, I won't do it, but just are you comfortable with me putting this out there on LinkedIn? And that was a video that then got a lot of traction about, how they're attacking you, how smart. This is not a Nigerian prince that's emailing you. This is next level, how smart they're working with Google Ads and how Google is not protecting us. And I said, somebody needs to call them out. So I was very worried. And I remember I was like, right, before I do this, maybe I need to go into my passwords across like all my 100 logins and enable two-factor authentication on everything, because I was terrified. You
use a password manager, right?
Oh, 100%. But I was terrified that, I became a target, and luckily that didn't become the case. But every time I posted about it, we saw an elevated kind of impacts. So it's definitely something I worry about, like the rise of AI. When that came out, I didn't really know how to approach it, whether this could be destroying our business. And the first thing I did, I went to a marketing team and said, like, can you find me a stage where you make me keynotes? And it forces me to figure it out. Like every time I'm uncomfortable, I'm like, right, let's set myself a ridiculous goal. And that forces me to dig into it and figure out, because I don't want to be on the stage feeling like an idiot. And it really helps me.
So you're now also an AI guy?
I can talk about it relatively confidently, but do not put me next to an expert, because I will look like a complete idiot.
Do you use it on a daily basis?
Oh,
yeah.
Like my husband is like, can you ask your lady to answer this? Because
so your ChatGPT's lady?
Apparently so. And I randomly I was in London this weekend and I was like, oh, this hotel. How many rooms do you think? Let me ask. And everything that comes in my head, I want to see it answered in the right way. And it's silly things like we often talk about a metric in Mews, like what's the revenue per square meter? And then everyone's debating, how do we get the square meters of a hotel? I'm like, have you tried asking the ChatGPT to do a best guess? And it's great. Like, it's like, this is how many rooms you have. An average room size is this. Your corridors should be this. And it's so good at very quickly distilling really complex kind of breakdowns into a simple answer. And I think everyone should learn to be comfortable with AI. And I understand that it's not the pace at which everyone is adopting, but everyone around you is. So don't get left behind.
I think I liked a quote by one of our colleagues who was saying that you should take AI as a really skilled and good intern, not a CEO, because this CEO can also make mistakes, but you expect them from an intern, even if it's, so you still have to kind of check the if it's valid, what this lady or in my case, I think it's a guy, because I recently asked, I had a piece of Lego and I didn't know from what series it is. So I took a photo and I said, which series it is. And so I also embraced it, even though I'm always late to adopt things. I was and
it's like asking, so there's things that make me uncomfortable, because as a CEO, I have to have a voice about everything, like legal, finance, product development. And sometimes I just feel like I don't really understand what they're talking about. And I literally will throw out a metric that some finance person has thrown my way. And I'd say, like, explain this to me like I'm a 15-year-old. And it is so good at making things come to life.
So it says things like slay and
yes, like I think that's 14.
Oh, sorry. If you had a chance to be in a team in R&D, which one would it be and why? I think I know the answer. Let's see if I'm right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
This is hard, but now I feel like you've got the answer. So if I was an engineer, which I am not, and I've never had the aspiration, but if I was an engineer, I'd want the hairiest challenge, and I'd probably be in the platform team, because they're solving some of the most complex things, and I genuinely want to be in the thing that's the hardest. And I don't think that was the answer.
No, but I think our platform viewers will love this, because I don't think CEO would ever say that, because platform is usually kind of left behind. It's you have to have it, so you have it. It's not like you want to have it.
But the thing is that the talents we have in the platform, these are the smartest of the smart people, and the way they think through problems, it is magic to spend time with them. And honestly, I don't know what they do, but I know it's really hard. Yeah, no, but it is magic. And I think I'd want to be around people like that.
Wow. So I thought GX.
That would be the logical, because I'm so passionate about the problem. But if I was an engineer, I'd be a very different person. And I put myself in the shoes of the engineer.
And then there was somebody else who thought it would be, I know I forgot how it's called now, but something like leaderboard. Like
like a benchmarking tool.
Benchmarking tool, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because you like things to be neat, and then you compare where you are. So
okay. If I was this Matt and I had to work in R&D with the skill set that I have, then I'd probably do that.
Okay, so I had it all wrong. And towards the end of our discussion, what if you had an unlimited budget? What would we build?
I would not. So I would probably
not build.
No. So I would probably have our own hotel, the Mews Hotel, and we would build the solution that we think is the right solution without any input from anyone else. We know what the problems are, but we also know what we think the hotel of in 10 years' time would be. And sometimes we build solutions that are like, this is not the future yet, but we can't shortcut it because we're supporting actual businesses that have to run today. But if you were to say, okay, time and money is not a problem, I would just stop and saying, let's just build the best hotel that we then would, and that would be the business. We would scale, we would build these hotels, and we would, like almost what Citizen M started 10 years ago. I thought they were on the right track. It's just they lost their way along the way. It just didn't push far enough in what they were doing, and they just like, this is good enough. Let's start pushing it out there. And the brand scaled, and it's fine. It's a really nice tech-forward product, but they could have taken that to the next level. And if time and money was not a problem, I would probably take their vision, but like 10 times further.
But would you have just one hotel, or?
Well, I would build one hotel and prove to the industry that we built something infinitely better than anyone else, and then we would just scale that out.
So it would be like kind of a franchise model. People could like just
yeah, like pretty much. You can buy the tech from Mews, and we would tell you how to do it. It's more like a franchise and managed model, because franchise is very light. Kind of, you slap a brand on the roof and then you get connected to the infrastructure in a light way. Whereas if someone manages your hotel, you get to say when what will happen where. And I do want to say, like, the micromanagement in me comes up.
How close were we ever to having our own hotel? Because I know this has been out there. Randomly, somebody will always post, it's like, we should have a hotel. And Richard will always like, yeah, we should. How were we ever close to that?
No, not really. So we've had accommodation. I don't know if you remember when we were renting rooms across the city, because we're like, why would we pay for hotel rooms if we can just rent an apartment with a monthly rental?
I have spent some strange nights in the London one. Yeah.
Like, it worked for the time when we were relatively poor. So that's the closest we've ever come. But the thing is, we have a problem to solve, and it is so hairy that I don't want to get distracted with running a hotel. Ultimately, I'd still have to do it.
Is that something that you would do when you... I know you're not even close to retiring from Mews, but I cannot really imagine you going back to like a market and just look for a job. Actually putting like open to work in LinkedIn. So what is it?
I think I'm unemployable at this point. I'm so opinionated that people will hate working with me. But what would I do? Something very different. I don't do things twice. I don't enjoy it. I don't learn from it. So I don't think I'd want to run a hotel unless I can go really extreme on really building something that will transform the industry. But I'd probably do something completely different that people don't expect.
So you always do a different workout because you say you never do things twice, or you?
No, workouts like trying.
All right, Matt. Thanks very much for joining us. I know you have a flight to catch, so thanks for the time. And tune in for the next episode, and we'll see who's going to be on the hot seat.
Nice.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks.